Good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. If you could all stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is our workshop presentation related to classification and compensation studies. At this time, is there any public comment? Okay, noting no public comment, can I get a verification of the posting of the agenda, please?
Pam Moore, for the record, the agenda was posted on November 4th between the hours of 1 and 5 at the locations listed on the agenda in accordance with statutes.
Thank you, Pam. Can I get an approval of this agenda as submitted?
Mr. Chair, move for approval of the agenda as submitted.
Mr. Chair, I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. We'll jump to our appointment. A, consideration possible action, approval of compensation study of all Churchill County positions by Baker Tilly or PayPoint HR. And with that,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Joe Sanford for the record. At the conclusion of our last meeting, we had some discussions about a compensation study. At that time, two primary candidates were identified, Baker Tilly and PayPoint HR. I reached out to both parties and scheduled times for them to give a presentation to the commission today to answer any questions you may have about how they perform a compensation study, what exactly is involved, what their process is, and what we would expect to receive. They both agreed to give a presentation today. I believe first up is Baker Tilly, and Sarah Town is here for them.
Sarah, can you hear us?
I can. I also have our practice leader, Jada Kent, who is on the call with us as well.
Okay, the floor is all yours, so whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to present our proposal for the full comprehensive classification and compensation study for Churchill County, Nevada. I do have a presentation to share. Let me know when you all can see. Are you able to see?
Not yet. We're pulling it up right now.
Oh, good.
Okay, Sarah, I made you the organizer, so you should be able to share it now. Just make sure that you turn it back to me when we're done.
Sure. I am currently sharing my screen.
Can you fix it? I can't get it to go.
Okay, we can see it now. You're good to go.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much. Well, this meeting, I want to be able to share who we are at Baker Tilly, introduce you to the team, and I will have Jada go ahead and share that information. And then I will do a deep dive of the project overview as well as our timeline. So let's begin. Go ahead, Jada.
Great. All right. Well, thank you all so much for having us. Just to kind of introduce who is Baker Tilly, most who have heard the name Baker Tilly affiliate us with being a large public accounting firm, and that is true, but we also do a lot of consulting. About a third of our of Baker Tilly is consulting, and we have an entire section dedicated to state and local government focused services. Our practice specifically has existed for more than 30 years. We were previously Springstead before we merged in 2019, Waters Consulting before that. So our process, our way of going about doing this type of work with local government organizations has existed for very many years. And so too is our experience. We have a job evaluation tool that we will leave you with. So with us, you don't just get a study, we're going to give you a tool and a framework, instructions and training for maintaining the process going forward. And we recently combined with Moss Adams. If you've heard the news, it just kind of expanded our presence in the West. So the folks in Moss Adams who kind of do these types of services, we just got an even deeper bench of those kind of subject matter experts to lend a hand if we need it. You also see a couple of workplace awards on the screen. The only reason we show that is really just born out of the age of COVID, is not knowing, continuity of staff and who's going to go down and out, and how is my project going to continue to move forward during that time. So we do have a lot of people who like to work here. We have had a lot of continuity of staff, a lot of people who don't leave. And so we also organized our projects so that multiple people know what's going on at all stages, just so we always have a backup plan to keep your project moving forward. Okay, and where do we work? Our practice is mostly focused on public sector. We almost only do work in the public sector, and that means all of these types of organizations that you see here. More traditionally, cities, towns, counties, but also different types of transportation, housing, health, utilities, you name it, type of organizations. And we have a couple of examples of organizations that we're working with currently. The reason we like to tell you who are the other clients that we have currently is just to demonstrate, you know, how far and wide our experience is. And I say that because certain states have some pretty funny laws to describe and define how work and pay has to be administered. And because other states have these funny laws and we get to go play limbo or chicken with those laws, we get to bring that experience to you where you might not have thought of maybe approaching it in this way because you haven't had to. So getting to bring all of that experience across the country, we get to bring it here to help make this project for you here successful. A couple of other projects that we've worked on recently, I think geographically close to you, we did City of North Las Vegas, we did Douglas County, and then, you know, kind of jumping over the border, Mono County is pretty nearby as well. And then this is our compensation consulting team. So I'm here down in the Dallas office, Sarah's over in Charlotte. We're really spread all over the place. As I mentioned, we work, it's a national practice, so we work all across the country. We try to staff our projects based on geography as much as we can. We know it's important to have someone in your time zone helping you. And so we do have a couple of folks, you know, from the Central all the way to the Pacific time zone that we can help staff your project with.
I also like to share that we are a small but mighty team, but fully engaged in what we do. We're a highly collaborative group. Jada and myself were both involved in the Douglas County, Nevada project, and so having that continuity of staff, the majority of our team having experience actually in local government or having doing compensation consulting the majority of their career. I'm a bit of a different character. I'm a bit of an oddball in the group, and that prior to joining Baker Tilly, I was in higher education, been on the faculty at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill for the last 10 years. So I'll walk you now through our proposal and our process for the county. It's a 5-phase process that we plan on working through. Starts with phase 1 of our planning meetings, being able to understand our working relationship with the project team as well as county leadership, understand the need and impetus for a compensation study now. We like to get some input very early on from leadership, and that's through a department director questionnaire, being able to ask specific questions about pain points when it comes to classification and compensation, if there are any issues when it comes to positions that are just hard to recruit or hard to retain right now. Different leaders might have different opinions on which those positions need to be looked at. Then a very large data collection effort, looking at your existing pay structures, policy handbooks, job descriptions, organizational charts, any collective bargaining agreements that we do need to understand. Jada is a certified labor relations professional, and we do work and understand union environments. And then we also like to have communication meetings. For staff, for leadership, they start to hear classification and specifically compensation, and there's some uncertainty about what that means. And so we like to introduce ourselves, let them know about the study, what we will look at, what we won't look at, have them have an opportunity to ask us questions directly. Once we complete that data collection, namely collecting and understanding the existing positions through job descriptions, we'll move into phase 2, which is position review. Using those existing job descriptions, we want to make sure that they're up to date, and we'll review all titles, making recommendations for adjustments. Sometimes that's just formatting and semantics, but oftentimes there are positions that have title inflation, or if you're an analyst not analyzing anything, or a coordinator not coordinating anything, we want to make sure that that position has the correct title. Any positions where there is an outdated job description, we have our own process. It's called a position analysis questionnaire that we can distribute to employees, that they can also fill out that information to get us updated information on their position. Once we have that documentation, we can then move into job evaluation. As Jada mentioned, we have our own point factor tool. It's called SAFE, stands for Systematic Analysis and Factor Evaluation, and it is a process to establish the hierarchy of jobs within the organization. It is developed by certified compensation professionals specifically to measure local government jobs. As Jada mentioned, we only work with public sector agencies, and so we needed a tool that was specific to understand those types of positions. It is a measurement of the position, not the person in the role. It's what makes us compliant with the Federal Equal Pay Act. And it's based off of these 9 compensable factors, the same compensable factors that we'll use to evaluate all the positions. We look at the typical ones like education and experience, not what the person currently holds, but what the minimum qualifications are to fill the position. We also look at the level of work, the difficulty or the complexity of the job, who you're interacting with on a regular basis, the physical demands, the working conditions or those environmental exposures, whether the position has autonomy and discretion to make decisions, what's the impact of those decisions or the community at large, and then the type and scope of supervision exercise. The result of this process is how we compare jobs internally to each other. How do 2 entry-level positions compare even though they sit in very different departments and do different work for the county? How do 2 managers compare? Not all managers are the same, even though they have manager in the title. Some have different education experience requirements. Some supervise more people. And so we have a system that allows us to balance and take that into consideration. Again, we'll do this process for all positions in the county. While we're doing that, we're also outside looking at the market. So this is what makes our process very efficient, is because we have these dedicated specialized compensation professionals. Some people will be reviewing job descriptions and doing job evaluation. The other set of people will be looking externally at the market. So this is a highly engaged process. Again, we like to partner with the organizations to identify a comparable and competitive list of peer organizations. We don't ever have Baker Tilly coming in and saying, these are the peer organizations, or this is who you should be comparing yourself to as a county. We want your input. So as part of that department director questionnaire process, one of the questions that we ask leadership is, who should we be comparing the county to? Because who you're losing talent for in terms of attorneys is maybe different than deputy sheriffs. Those are different marketplaces. Those are different careers. And so each department might have their own set of recommendations. Ultimately, though, we want to get to a single peer list, a list of organizations that look like you and work like you, are similar in size, similar in scope, similar in services offered. These organizations may be geographically close to you, but maybe just experiencing similar growth patterns. Highlighting the best peer organization is that movement of employees within the market space, though. Who you're in competition for talent with, who's maybe chasing you or who you're chasing in terms of that market space. The majority of the data is going to come from these public peer organizations, and then we do incorporate published salary survey data that can help represent the private sector. So we're not able to reach out to specific private sector companies. We use these data sets that allow us to actually pinpoint a specific geographic area, like Churchill County, and understand what is the private sector rates for similar and like positions. Very important when we have positions that are in competition with private industry. Skilled labor positions. I mentioned attorney type positions, but we can also look at just support positions, HR, IT, legal. All of those are going to have similar or competitive private sector industry positions. Our goal is to take a good portion of the positions to market, approximately 100 positions. Now, that's not all of the positions, and our goal here is aligned with best practices. Best practices say we need to calculate market values for at least 50% of the positions in order to realign to new market conditions. So we take 60% of the positions included in market, ensuring that we're at least getting that 50% threshold. Now, you may have some well-developed career progression, like accountant, an accountant 1, an accountant 2, and a senior accountant. We don't necessarily have to take all 3 of those positions to market to be able to understand what is the marketplace looking like for an accounting position right now. And that's how we're able to do a sampling of understanding what the market is today. Now, when we go out to these peer organizations, we're asking for their job descriptions, their organizational charts, as well as their pay. We want to understand how much of the work overlaps in terms of those minimum qualifications, the duties and responsibilities. Because we're not just doing a title for title match. You may call it a specialist, they may call it a coordinator, but if the work is fundamentally the same, that's what we're comparing you to in the market. And we do make some adjustments to that data once it comes back from those peer agencies. So something like Workweek. If another organization is on a 37 5-hour work week, we may adjust to make sure that those annualized rates are comparable. We may age it if it's not for the current fiscal year, but our goal is to understand what is the current marketplace. So we will be relentless in the pursuit of the data that is most relevant and current. And then we do a geographic cost of labor adjustment. That's what allows us to compare you to places that are maybe not as geographically close, but might have similar or different costs of labor. Most importantly, though, we do not weight the data, so no one peer is given preference over another. It's really this law of averages that we're working towards. What is the average market value for the position? And this is a sample of some of our reporting. So I talked about that geographic adjustment that we make to the data. This is some of the information that we used from the Douglas County survey, of which Churchill County was a peer. But this data comes from the Economic Research Institute. Again, allows us to pinpoint a specific geography and understand what is the cost of labor in that given area. It's off of a scale of 100, the United States average being 100. And then that geo-diff percentage column is how much we're adjusting the data up or down by. We use this to be able to start to narrow that peer list as well, because we don't want to adjust the data too much, or it's going to really not be a great comparator agency. So we'll work with you, as well as leadership, to cultivate this final list of 10 peer organizations. And then some of the other market results will show you the aggregate of all of the benchmark positions, as well as the number of matches and the average minimum, midpoint, and maximum for those positions. We do a full range comparison as well. We want to ensure that your starting salaries are competitive, so you're able to draw talent into the organization, but we also don't want the county to become a training ground. So we look at the full range to make sure you're competitive all the way through. Once those two big bodies of data are complete, we do want to make some adjustments to the data. So once we have that market data complete, once we have the position evaluation data done, we can then put them together to go into our favorite phase, which is phase 4. So here in phase 4 of pay plan development, it happens in 3 stages: pay structure adjustments, position assignments, and then implementation, or where the people go. So we can utilize your existing pay plan or create brand new pay structures and provide recommendations that are really data driven based off of the results of the study. Once we have the pay structure developed, we then have to figure out where all of the positions go. Again, this is a highly engaged process. We go line by line, position by position, to ensure that every single position has the correct grade assignment, looking at all of the available information. We're looking at job evaluation scores, the external market data, even existing equity. We want to understand career progressions and supervisor-subordinate separation. So we're looking at everything, which is why we also recommend including department heads in a preliminary review of grade assignments. Again, they're included throughout this process. When we're first starting in stage 1 of understanding the nuances within their department, they've had a say with the peer organizations that we're comparing to, and then they're also involved here in how we finalize our recommendations. Once we get those grade assignments finalized, we then look at plugging people into the conversation. The entire point of this classification and compensation study is to evaluate the positions, not the people in the roles. So we're, throughout this process, not looking at the employee's current salary, their performance, anything about the individual, because let's be honest, if they won the lottery and they're out of here next week, the position still exists. And so we have to come up with a compensable, defensible system that understands where that position's value is. And then we can start plugging people back into the conversation. And we do look at a couple of different scenarios. We want to provide you with not just a pay plan that works for this year, but something that you can implement. Baker Tilly is widely successful at getting our implementation scenarios or our strategies implemented within the first year, about a success rate of 93%. And that is because we really, again, work hand in hand with the organizations. We don't just provide you with a final report and say, best of luck, Churchill County. We really want to make sure that you're able to take actionable steps today of how to implement this, whether that's everything all at once or even over a phased implementation approach. We want to make this truly customizable that's going to work for your workforce and within your fiscal needs. So again, some of the materials that we use in determining that. When we're designing a pay plan, we want to align it to your compensation philosophy, whether that's to strategically lag because you know your benefits are phenomenal, be at market, which most organizations are choosing to match the market, or whether you're wanting to be an employer of choice and strategically choosing to lead the market. We will work with you to develop your compensation philosophy and design a pay structure with that compensation philosophy in mind. And then when it comes to the type of pay plans, if you like your step system, we're happy to keep that step system, but create something that is manageable and something that is easily explained to employees. They should be able to understand exactly how their pay is determined based off of that compensation system. It shouldn't be a magic or mystery how people are paid in the public sector. We have that philosophy in mind, and so we want to design you a pay structure, whether that's a step system, an open system, or maybe even something brand new, more along the lines of a hybrid. And then we want to make sure that those range spreads are accurate. And either one of these pay plans, that anchor to market becomes our critical value. And from there, we're just aligning, making sure that the minimums are competitive, but we're also not reducing employees' earning potential as part of their maximums. Once we have those pay structures and we know where the positions go, we do look at implementation strategies. Again, we want to make sure that they are customizable to your organization. Option one is just that move of employees to the minimum if their current salary is below. It's the minimum action required to adopt the pay system. But if we already have a planned general wage increase or a COLA, that's where option two comes in, where we can build that into our costing scenarios. But in either of these scenarios, it doesn't take into consideration compression. So if you want us to do a compression analysis, so we're ensuring that new employees are not coming in right at the same starting point or even leapfrogging over more tenured employees, that's where this option 3 comes in, where we can look at an adjustment based off of the employee's time and role. Again, all entirely customizable. And then we wrap everything up in terms of phase 5. We document our full methodology used to conduct the study, our findings, our recommendations. We want to make sure that we are transparent and accountable to the data that drove those recommendations. But then we do like to explain ourselves as well. So a final presentation is the same as our final report, but it's just a way for us to present those results to whoever you would like us to. If you want us to be in front of employees to easily explain our recommendations and have them have the opportunity to ask us questions directly, again, we can help with strategic communication for employees, for leadership, for elected officials. And then all project documentation is delivered, and that includes ongoing training for the HR staff to administer and maintain the new system. There's no additional software costs or anything that is needed to maintain the SAFE system, but they have the tool that they need to maintain the classification and compensation system moving forward. If a position changes and develops over time, if new positions are invented, they have the tools that they need to maintain that. In terms of our overall project timeline, we know that we have a need to align with your budget process. So our proposal is to start this project initiation, meaning that data collection and communication efforts in November. And then starting in December, working through the job evaluation or position review, and then that market assessment. We're hyper aware of the fact that in the later parts of the year, with holidays, with out of office, and then HR departments working through open enrollment, that fielding market assessments during this time can be challenging. But we've also already built in that into our timeline, that if we need to go into the first part of January for that market assessment, we can still get into pay plan development, where you'll have budget information in later January to at least ensure that you have a budget number to make some final decisions in that preliminary budget meeting for February, just in time for your final budget in May, supporting an effective implementation for July 1. Again, that final project completion, wrap up of everything in terms of the final presentation or final report would happen in February. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. I'll leave you with our contact information and a little bit of who Jada and I are as people, and the type of people that put coats on our dogs. So this is Harvey, our little Barker Tilly. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions about our project and our process.
Okay, thank you guys for that presentation. With that, I'll open it up to board or staff for any questions you guys have for Baker Tilly.
Yes, ma'am. This is Commissioner Blakey. While everybody's gathering their thoughts, if you were to perform this compensation study and classification, moving in the future, does the model that you're presenting, is it renewable fairly easy to where we can just use the same model every time we want to do this for, like, if we just chose to do this every 3 years or every 5 years or something like that?
Absolutely, and I can have Jada talk more to this, but our main recommendation would be that you maintain this system by doing these types of studies every 3 to 5 years. And our process is fairly standardized in that it is renewable for a period of time, absolutely. The same 5-phase process is one that we've been working through for several years. It works, and it is something that is really effective. So if you want to come back to us in a couple of years and use this same strategy and the same model, I can guarantee you that Baker Tilly and that Jada and I will be the main points of contact for that work.
Yeah, so the job evaluation tool is really foundational to everything. It's going to be the backbone of the pay plan, and we use a regression analysis to justify it. So the job evaluation and then the market is kind of where that correlation hits. And so then as you get new positions or positions changed, that job evaluation score will inform the grade assignment. So as long as you're doing that annual maintenance, like if you had a reclass request here and there, if you did even a mini market study every year, every other year, just kind of looking at a portion of your positions, those kind of annual maintenance things should keep your pay plan up to date until you need to do a whole recalibration like this again, about every 3 to 5 years. You could probably stretch it to 7, hope we don't have another pandemic on our hands, but something like that just kind of really throws a wrench in the system. But that annual maintenance should keep the shelf life of it pretty good for you.
Okay, and I have one more question. Have you found a great model for the positions of the step positions of when you're doing this? As we have 93 grades and 13 steps. Is that the model do you find that model to be good? Do you have opinion about that?
I did notice that as part of your 100 grade system with 13 steps and the percentage between those. Jada and I have some thoughts on how to improve that based off of what we've seen in the marketplace. I can tell you just from the number of positions, having that many grades means there's a lot of differentiation and not a great system right now for how positions are graded. It's kind of a magic or mystery why this position might be in a 57 versus a 58. And thankfully, our SAFE system allows us to place positions with a systematic format and process in mind. And so, yes, we want to make sure that your pay plan is actually data-driven. So we'll look at market. If other positions or other peer organizations are following a step system, we'll gather information on what is the appropriate number of steps and the percentage between steps to make sure that you maintain your competitiveness with your compensation philosophy in market. But if you want us to build a completely brand new system, I can tell you it's kind of Jada and I's favorite part. We're giant data nerds, so we'll get into exactly how many grades and how many steps and the percentage between them you need. And if it's maybe time to step away from a step system and move towards a hybrid system, I could be convinced to work towards that because it's going to give you a lot more freedom and flexibility to retain people as well as recruit.
Thank you for that. That's all I have.
Any other questions from board or staff? Go ahead.
Hi, this is Sheriff Hickox. I have a couple of, maybe they're dumb questions, but when you're meeting with our staff, will it be in person or is it all going to be virtual?
Great question, Sheriff. Not a dumb question at all. So what we've right now proposed is a fully virtual model. So we're happy to have these kinds of town hall environments, though we do have a contingency that if you'd like us there in person, we can send staff to meet in person. Again, a town hall environment where we're trying to get in front of employees. We know that sometimes in this virtual environment, employees may not feel comfortable wanting to come off of mute and ask their question. But as you can see here, these are our real phone numbers and our real emails. So we try to make ourselves accessible to all employees as well as leadership within the county. We're not just working for the HR department. We want to work on behalf of the entire organization. So if anyone has any questions at any point in time, they can call us and contact us, and we'll be happy to answer their questions.
Okay, follow-up question on that. You said town hall meetings, but will you be meeting with the departments individually, or is it all going to be just in a setting like this?
Great question as well. So as part of our phase one, our initial communication meetings are in a town hall environment setting, but we do want to get those department director questionnaires filled out by each of the department heads to get us some of that additional feedback. If there's a department head that would like an additional meeting, or they just feel comfortable with, yep, I've provided everything I need in that survey or that questionnaire, they can choose to meet with us individually or just provide us with that information on the survey. Again, we're flexible in terms of meeting with whoever wants to meet with us.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
This is Commissioner Hyde, and I think this may answer questions, is there is a out-of-pocket expenses. If we want you to come here, is that every visit, $600 to $900 per 1-2 day visit?
Correct. So that would be for however many times you would like us or need us there. Again, our original and our base proposal right now is for a fully virtual environment. But if you do want us for any point in time, whether that's at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end of this process, it would be for each one of those times.
Okay, so no visits are built in. Thank you.
Correct.
I have a question. This is Sherry Whiteman, the comptroller. You talked about a sampling of 60%. How are you going to choose that sample?
We'll work with the organization to determine which positions are most critical in terms of recruitment or retention. We want to make sure that we have enough positions that are across the organization. But as I mentioned, you might have some really well-developed career progressions already, such as like an accountant 1, 2, and a senior accountant. We don't necessarily need to take all 3 of those positions to market to be able to understand the value. About 50%, or about 60 of the positions that we notice in your existing pay structure are already around those career progressions, whether they're a lead or a senior or part of like a 1-2 series. So we'll be looking at taking a base percentage of the majority of the positions.
Of course, yeah. Ask away.
This is Sheriff Hickox again. I apologize for monopolizing the time. My question is in all of those agencies that you've worked with, have you done just the municipality portion, or have you done the law enforcement portion as well? Because I know that a lot of those are unionized.
Absolutely. Well, you're talking to the right person, Sheriff. Law enforcement tend to love me. Well, I'll say public safety in general. I speak your language of being able to understand what comes with law enforcement positions and their sensitivity to market. While our SAFE evaluation system is specifically designed to measure local government jobs, it's also about establishing a hierarchy for those positions. You already have a natural built-in hierarchy. You don't need me to tell you the difference between a sergeant and a lieutenant. So that natural built-in hierarchy for law enforcement or public safety positions allows us to be more sensitive to the market. Understanding, again, that maybe some of these wide ranges or the number of steps is really challenging you to be able to recruit and talent into the organization, but also retain employees as they go throughout their careers. So we are well adept to be able to build specific pay structures to public safety or merge them within an existing system. We've done that work all across the United States.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
As part of the compensation study, is there an efficiency piece tied to this?
Can you say more, Commissioner Hyde? Sorry.
Like efficiency, like numbers, just say numbers of people within the county versus employees in a certain group.
Yeah, so not as part of the classification and compensation system. We're not looking at workload or an efficiency of workload from a position standpoint. We won't be recommending on you need more positions or less positions. Again, our goal is evaluating what work exists in the organization currently and what is the value of that work. But the benefits of working with Baker Tilly is that we do have other teams that are specifically focused on workforce compensation or workforce studies, looking at strategic planning and efficiency measures. So we can certainly put you in touch with somebody else on the Baker Tilly side if that is work that you'd like to pursue.
Thank you.
Does anyone have anything else? Okay, thank you guys for your time. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the opportunity. We look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll jump to our next presentation by PayPoint HR. And the floor is all yours when you're ready to go.
Hello, my name is Karen Campbell. I'm with PayPoint HR, and with me is Dr. Rick Campbell. And if it's okay with you, I will share my screen.
And it is present not allowing us to. Let me.
So I think we need permissions to share.
Karen,
unless
I
you
just
want-
gave that to you. Does it work?
Okay, let me just see.
Sarah, are you still listening? Will you make me the organizer again, please?
I can. Let me see if I have that ability. It says you are the organizer.
Karen, you want to try again?
I'm trying. My screen. I'm not able to. Rick, are you able to?
We'll have it up in one moment.
Okay. It's asking me to restart GoTo, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, we don't want to do that. Can you email your presentation to me?
I will be sharing momentarily. That was okay.
Yes, if you can, that's great. Perfect, thank you, we see it.
Wonderful. Just make this much better. And switch screens here. Now switch to my. Please bear with me.
Sure. So while Rick is getting that ready, I can talk a little bit to begin the presentation. We understand that employees at Churchill County really are the framework with which you provide services to your community. And our hope in this presentation is to go over how we feel we're able to collaborate with you and your project team in order to meet your goals of attracting and retaining quality employees through a compensation plan that is transferable, easy to understand, and easy to administer. We see ourselves as referees. We know when, at the end of the day, employees are able to concentrate on what they do in the field and not any bad calls that were made during this process. So we want to make sure that we use the tools that are available to us, and that is basically being transparent and equitable throughout our process. And we will coach you through the process in order to adopt methods or steps that meet your needs as far as both timeline and outcomes. So Rick, if you want to go ahead and go to the first slide, we can talk a little bit as to our background and our history. 100% of what we do are classification and compensation studies like the one we've been asked to conduct for Churchill County. 95% of our clientele are in the public sector. So while we do have good understanding of how operations should work within your organization, each client is unique. So we are going to work with you and your staff in an outreach to understand how jobs and responsibilities are delegated. What we have come to find in working with other organizations is that a title as simple as administrative assistant, that we think we all know what that position does, oftentimes maybe in one department more like a bookkeeper, and in yet another department more like an HR generalist. So this is our opportunity to kind of look under the hood and determine what the type of work is. It's possible that positions may be reclassified, but we want to define the work before we determine what fair pay is for that type of work. So we'll be working with employees in conducting that job questionnaire, or job analysis questionnaire, and get their feedback of real-time information as to what it is they do and not rely on job descriptions. So we've worked with organizations both large and small. We feel like we are a good fit for the size of Churchill County. My background and a little bit about our team. I've worked in HR since 1995. I started working with a professional employer organization that was ultimately owned by Fidelity Investments. I left that to start my own payroll firm, had that for about 10 years where I owned and operated it, sold it to begin PayPoint HR with my husband, Dr. Rick Campbell. Rick won't say or brag about himself, but I can. His background is he has a PhD in mechanical engineering. He literally is a rocket scientist. He's worked for NASA and GE on rocket engines. So I like to say tongue-in-cheek that it takes a rocket scientist to figure out what fair pay is. But in all seriousness, when we go to boards and trusts and commissions to ask them to adopt our recommendations, they can feel confident in the data that we're presenting, that it is defensible and substantiated, and you have the ability to make decisions on what we recommend and the information we're providing to you. We also have on our team Jenna Hurdle. She is more or less the background in legal and will help us to make sure that we're meeting your quality assurance standards and that everything that we give to you meets federal, state, and local regulations and requirements. So that is our executive team. You will be getting our principal team on your project, so we're not farming this out to any other individuals. We certainly do have administrative assistants behind the scenes, but they're only going to be helping us with office type of projects or work. So we will be the face of the organization and also the ones who are rolling up our sleeves to make sure that the work that we're completing for you does again meet those quality standards. So while each of us have kind of our own area of expertise, I think that helps lend towards a more relevant outcome for our clients because we do look at this from our different perspective and different lenses. So how we start each project is we meet and have a kickoff meeting with your project team and use our communication plan template to get that started. In that template, there are some tools that we like to use. One of them is our executive announcement letter. And what we like to have our clients do is use that template in order to announce to employees that you've gone through a formal RFP process, you've selected a vendor, hopefully the vendor is PayPoint HR, and on these dates, we're going to be holding meetings for employees to have employee briefing sessions. Typically, those are held over 2 days, but we can be flexible on how that works. If we are traveling there, we're going to ask that they be consecutive days. So that just makes sense. In order for the process to go smoothly in that communication plan, we also have kind of a timeline where we sit down with you to go over our methodology and discuss how we need to customize it specifically for Churchill County. And we work towards where your expectation is having the project completed, and then more or less reverse engineer the steps we need to get through and the milestones we need to meet in order to get to that timeline. So the communication plan is very helpful. In there, there are additional templates on how to, schedule the meetings, frequently asked questions, and items like that. On the screen now is our project approach or our methodology. Basically, we use 3 independent metrics in order to come up with our recommendations. I think we're a little bit unique in that regard. On the screen, on the left-hand side in blue, that is the classification portion of the study. That's looking at do knowledge, skills, and abilities kind of, are they addressed in the job description, and understanding the work that's being done. So that's having employees complete that job analysis questionnaire, or what we at PayPoint HR like to call position vantage point. We call it that because we want to drive home the fact with employees that this is not a performance review. This is them more or less as the subject matter expert, helping us to better understand the position. On the right-hand side in orange, that's the compensation portion of the study. I like to think of that as the external portion of the study. That's working with the project team to develop a list of comparator organizations that are that make sense based on socioeconomic information, but also common sense factors. And then creating a gold standard of surveys, a survey that's asking questions that answers what it is Churchill County wants to know. So it is very customized, and we can ask additional questions or questions in a way that makes sense for Churchill County. Once we collect all that information back, we look also at your internal hierarchy. So we look at your organizational chart and see how it is you value various positions or departments. We worked with an organization in Missouri where their Parks and Rec system was very high in their organizational chart. Had we just matched pay for those positions to the market, it would have not really aligned to where they currently are. And they also had those positions where they expected greater education and experience. So we needed to bring that third component of internal hierarchy into how we did our correlation analysis. Ultimately, we'll come up with obviously a compensation structure that makes sense for you. Again, one that's easy to understand and easy to deploy. So our approach to classification is in essence that executive announcement letter, having the employee outreach, having employees complete that PVP questionnaire, then having supervisors review that, using that information to conduct a job evaluation. That will be something that PayPoint HR will do to rank order positions based on employees and supervisors' responses to those questionnaires. And we'll make sure we're understanding and looking at classifications. Do titles or jobs need retitled or repositioned and the like? So if Rick, you want to hit the next slide. The questionnaire that we've created should not take employees more than an hour to complete. That being said, it is an important factor we take into consideration. So we ask employees to take reasonable amount of time to complete it. But basically, we're asking them in their own words to tell us about their position and the results of their work and the tasks that they have needed to meet that work. So everything are those topics that are included in that questionnaire are reasons to pay a position differently than another. They are considered compensable factors. And we score each of those. And I'll let Rick talk to that a little bit more. I won't take his thunder. But Rick, make sure you discuss why it is I think we stand out with regards to how we work our compensable factor scoring system. But it does lend itself well to if the county wants to update things like job descriptions, it works well with regards to being able to do that and meet requirements like ADA requirements. So on the screen now is an output example of another client where basically we're rating positions. This output helps us kind of discuss patterns that we see. It is not a linear kind of regression. There's a curve to this, so points are not like for our employees' perspective, we don't like to cover this with employees, but it does help us say, for example, so the sergeant in police be aligned in the same pay grade with an electric line crew supervisor. Looking there looks to be about a 10% difference, maybe not, probably not. In their case, finance manager at wastewater treatment plant, they're a little closer, so it might make sense for them to be in the same pay grade. So this helps us kind of diagnose where you are currently and where the positions are currently to conduct that job evaluation. So next slide, Rick. And I'll let you take it from here.
All right, it looks like I'm up.
Thanks.
So some of the unique factors, and we'll cover this kind of in the last slide, that think distinguishes PayPoint, not only that Karen and I by default have very different backgrounds and viewpoints. So we don't have a cookie cutter approach, kind of in just the way we think. So for example, when we work for Nye County, well, they're not you. They have different priorities. The same way with Elko or Eureka, all different. And for us, what makes sense is that we don't use a generic model to try to fit everybody in that. We allow the data and the information that comes back from not only market survey, but also the information that's coming back from employees to honestly drive the ship. But back to the point on the compensation piece of things. So it's important for us to have a complete understanding, or to the best of our ability, to understand where you're at today, to know where you want to go in the future. It's usually a good first step to see if there's any anomalies in kind of the raw data. If we see it in the numbers, chances are employees feel it or perceive it. And to address those, one of the biggest ones that comes up is, is the upper level management, are they being disproportionately paid with respect to the employees they supervise? Is there a substantial discrepancy there? Things like that. And if the answer is no, well, that's a good and easy thing, to say. But there's other things that are important to look at. One of the things that we've found more and more, honestly, since COVID and the high inflation that we've experienced in the past 2-3 years, is that compression is becoming more and more prevalent, not only in Nevada, but other municipalities that we work for. In those cases, sometimes the priority for the organizations we work for is to kind of address that internal equity issue or challenge that's being faced. Compression, one of the typically happens is that you're having to bring in new hires at higher and higher levels of pay, whereas the employees that have stuck around, well, just because of the tax base, you'd not be able to move them in their pay grades as much as you would perhaps like. Now, there can be valid reasons for a discrepancy in pay. So on this particular chart, you see they are close to that 1 year experience. There's a group of employees at about 35% of the pay range. Well, if they came in with additional education or experience, or in the case of law enforcement, a lateral, that may make sense, where they were brought in at a higher pay range. But other cases, for example, that circle that's at about 6.5 years, they're making close to the entry level. Does that make sense? Well, typically the answer is no. There's been some kind of problem with the system being maintained all along. And so where you prioritize the budget is to perhaps move them up close to being more similar to other individuals in the workforce to balance out that internal equity. So that's one of the things that we do, at the very beginning. Now, that third yardstick that Karen mentioned, looking at the external market, it's important, particularly in the state of Nevada, and I was a resident of Washoe County for many years, so I have an understanding that there's a substantial differentiation across the state. That if you're in the western portion of the state, there's an awful lot of mining activities, and the priorities there can be different. So for example, in Eureka County, one of the things that they included in their study was to include for the mining operations for their safety individuals that they were going to be compared against law enforcement, honestly. That was where their competition for labor. Before we went down that path, that was kind of vetted out from the commissioners to say, yes, we approve this, and this is a reasonable methodology. Does that apply for everyone? No. That goes back to the point that I was trying to make, that every organization is unique, and you have to listen to make sure that you understand what is relevant for you. So we have a list here of what may be good comparators based on socioeconomic factors that Karen said. They are wide-ranging in size. Some are twice the size of the county, and others are much smaller. But again, you're starting off with a limited pool. So one of the things that we typically do at PayPoint, and this is in contrast perhaps with other organizations, is that not only do we provide kind of in results, averages of what results look like, but we also break down the market for each and every job title. What is the 20th percentile to the 80th, and everywhere in between. So at the end of the day, you can dial it in to what makes sense for you. Now, what I'm communicating to you is also going to be communicated to employees. It's important for not only adoption, but also just fairness, that everybody's on the same page, that everybody's receiving the same message. So we'll provide this kind of in a public document, what the market looks like for each and every job title. So our reports tend to be rather lengthy because we break it down in that fashion. Now, most organizations that we work with, just transparency, start off with wanting to be in that middle, that 50th percentile. And in English, that means half the organizations pay more and half pay less. It's not an average where a Reno or a Las Vegas can skew the numbers in an average. It is a counting number. It's positioning you in the middle. Now, it may be, and again, this would be disclosed to employees, that your strategic vision may look somewhat different. Maybe you want to be at the 60th. Okay. And we'll also convey to employees, well, the strategic vision will need to be taken into consideration, but it's also important what is budgetarily possible. And those are two different questions. So we calculate all these values in advance so that, again, you can make intelligent decisions based on all the facts and have it in hand. Now, just for reference, what is the, for example, the 40th percentile means? Well, if you had 10 organizations, 6 would pay more than that dollar amount, and 4 would pay less. So for the maintenance worker, in this case, $15.17 would be that kind of dividing line. And that's what would be conveyed to employees. Now, one of the things we say at the very beginning, and this is part of those briefing sessions that we'd like to have with employees, is to not only go over that questionnaire Karen mentioned, but also to set expectations. As a result of the study, if you ask employees, does everybody want a pay increase? And typically you get a hand raised, yes, I do. But what is realistic, though, and what we tell them, is that there will be a group of job titles that are paid below where they should be. And that's principally the purpose of a compensation study. But then there's also going to be a group of job titles that are paid right in alignment, and a third group that is paid better there at the county than in other places. That is a reasonable expectation. And if you don't set that expectation, honestly, day one, the only thing that you may produce for a number of employees is, morale challenges. And that's not a good thing. So being upfront, full disclosure, unbiased is an important part, no matter which vendor you end up selecting, to ensure that you have successful implementation at the end of the day. Now, one of the things that we do, as I mentioned, we're not a cookie cutter approach. Every organization is different. So we correlate the knowledge, skills, and ability there that you see on the horizontal axis that is derived from those job questionnaires with compensation, where that market is indicating, so that the results are relevant just to you. This model does not apply to NIE. It does not apply to Eureka or Elko or anywhere else. This is going to be based on your data. Now, what's the value of that? Well, this kind of chart gives you a nice warm fuzzy that two are saying the same things, and that's a good thing. But it's also a very useful tool going forward, and this is what we give blanketly to all of our clients, is this kind of correspondence, so that for either new positions or positions that take on additional responsibilities, you have a way of positioning them with respect to your employees, not on a national basis on what somebody else is doing. It's based on what you value. And that kind of ties back into what Karen was saying with respect to that community in Missouri. They highly value their parks and rec. That's good. That works for them. That may not work for everyone. So making sure those kinds of things are taken into consideration is really important to make sure that the results are relevant for you and your employees. Now, as I mentioned, we look at and break down where the different dollars end up showing up for each of the different market percentiles so that you have a better understanding of what's happening. Are there any particular departments more out of alignment, honestly, with respect to their markets than other ones? When there are cases like that, then it'll show up in the data. But this is just trying to give you a snapshot of where the organization is overall. That does not mean that there's going to be some job titles that are, again, are higher or lower where they should be. This is just giving you where is the community overall. We will break it down into individual job titles and eventually to the individuals themselves so that, again, things can be implemented into a payroll system and implemented going forward. One of the things that we're often asked is, all right, give us some options. Not only where we're at in the market, but also in terms of implementation. You may have a strategic vision of being at a higher dollar amount than what is affordable today. All right, how can we implement this in a systematic way that addresses any kind of internal equity issues from compression or other sources, and do so in a responsible manner with respect to taxpayers? So we help you in diving down into the numbers to make it all work at the end of the day. But part of the way Karen and I choose to operate, and this is, we're a family-owned organization. We're not a giant company responsible to other shareholders or the like. We invest ourselves personally in each of our clients. So it makes a lot of sense to us, having been employees at various organizations, that everything that we do, it's not only transferable, but Karen said, you're dealing with the project team or the owners of the company, so that it's a more hands-on and personal approach. So that's why part of our implementation is that we give our personal phone numbers, out to the project team, so that a year later, it's like if a question arises, you call us up. It's not additional charges or the like. It is something that makes sense to us. And for us, for a successful implementation, we don't generically believe that, and I'll take my businessman's hat off, put on my taxpayer's hat. But a system like this, unless there's some extraordinary circumstance, it should last 6 to 7 years. There's no point in doing this again and again and again. If you make adjustments with respect to inflation, normally things keep in alignment. The numbers suggest that historically. Now, will there be some job titles that move more so than others? Yeah, there'll be tweaks that can be made, but for the most part, it makes sense to us. Let's develop a robust mechanism or system for our clients that they can use going forward. That just makes sense. But with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Karen to talk about resources and training. Karen, you're on mute.
There we go. Can you hear me now? All right. So everything that we deliver to you is in workable format. So basically, what we have learned over time is that our clients have various IT platforms and different softwares that are available to them. So this is in a way that most clients are able to make adjustments, minor tweaks to the actual job descriptions themselves or the policy manual that we give to you. And one of the items that we give to you is, for example, a way for employees or supervisors in the future, if there needs to be a reclassification of the position, a way and a guide to have that process happen. And criteria, that's customized for you as to what triggers that, steps for human resources and leadership to kind of say what is within parameters of, a position either moving up or down a grade. How do we handle lateral transfers or the like? So all of that is given to you in a workable format. And on the next slide, I believe we're going to be discussing how that compensable factor scoring system will work for you. So everything that we deliver to you, just to cover quickly is, not anything that you have to pay additionally for software license of this compensable factor score is one that you can use on your existing platforms as far as software goes. But in essence, if a position needs to be reclassified, or maybe not, but just is up for consideration for reclassification, you answer those same questions that were in that PVP questionnaire based on the algorithm specific to Churchill County that we derived from this study. It will yield a score, and that output score will have alignment to your pay grades. So you can see where a position objectively would place within your pay grades that were adopted through the course of this project in a way that's objective. So based on that scoring system and not subjective in thinking like, I think a specialist should fall somewhere between a coordinator and a technician. This allows you to have a scoring system in order to do that. So, while Rick said you may not need to make adjustments, for 6 to 7 years. Again, that's assuming there's not a major fluctuation in the economy, but there will be positions that, might need to be changed because the responsibilities of that position have changed, or you've gotten a new position that's brand new there to the county. So how do you place that? That is something that we give to you. On the screen now is a screenshot of some of our forms that you'll be getting. It will allow you to have a discussion forum with employees saying kind of here's a before and after snapshot of how a reclassification or this study affected them personally. And it will allow you to have kind of an appeals process if a position needs to be reclassified or there's a new position. So next slide, Rick. On the screen currently is how we work job descriptions. And I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but job descriptions weren't necessarily part of what the expectations are for this project. But in essence, based on the information that we garner from employees and supervisors, we create a spreadsheet of that information, more or less create a template for a massive mail merge, that the output of that mail merge yields a job description. The intent of all this is kind of a lovely process because managing job descriptions can now be done in a spreadsheet. So instead of if you needed to add a comma in 279 job descriptions, you don't have to open each and every one of those job descriptions. You can do that in a column within Excel and then run the mail merge and have the output of the final job description. So it makes the process and administration of job descriptions so much easier. So next slide. So here on the screen is an output of the job description. Basically, each job description job title is a header, so you can see in your navigation pane on the left-hand side there, you can hop, skip, and a jump to different titles instead of scrolling through hundreds of pages. In the mail merge, you can select a single job description to print out or a department to create. But I don't want to take too much of our time on job descriptions, but the spreadsheet does allow for you to do sorting and all kinds of fun stuff within that spreadsheet. So why pick PayPoint HR? We understand the local market where you are, not to say that we won't be working with the project team to understand Churchill County better. We obviously know how to work with counties and how operations within counties works. You are getting our executive team on this, so we're not handing it off. We're not the sales professionals handing it off to the consultant. We are both the owners and operators, so you'll be getting us on this team. So you will be meeting with either Rick, myself, or Jenna throughout the process. We understand that each client is different. Again, not every job title is the same from one organization to another. Also, too, services that you offer might be unique, and your budgeting is unique. So we understand all of that. And we pride ourselves on deliverables that are, again, ones that you can adopt with confidence and make decisions based on our recommendations that, are representative of all stakeholders. So employees, managers, leadership, elected officials, and taxpayers. We're taking all stakeholders into consideration. And I think the best compliment that we can get is clients who either refer us or who come back to us, and we do and are proud, I guess, of those clients that do that for us. So we are only as good as our next referral, and we hope that we can work with Churchill and meet your goals again of attracting and retaining excellent staff, getting yourselves to market, and fitting your financial capabilities into a best outcome. Rick, do you want to hit the next slide? Okay, so we can open the floor to questions.
Okay, thank you both for that presentation. And with that, I'll open it back up to board and staff for questions or comments.
This is Commissioner Blakey. I'll ask you the same two questions I asked the last company. You understand our step and pay system. Do you have another system that's better than that system, or you like better, or a different model?
Rick, you're on mute, but I'll let you take that question.
Okay, thank you for alerting me. You can propose all different kinds of systems, and one can work conceivably better than another. It depends on the personnel and what is their expectations. Fundamentally, a range system gives you a lot higher degree of flexibility in terms of if you have a budget to move job titles 2.845%, well, in a range system, that's easy to do, fit based on budget. Whereas in some years, the step, you may not have the budget to move everybody. And so that's kind of the main benefit. There is usually a cost to move from a step system to a range, or from a range system to a step, to get it, everything lined up, or vice versa. Usually those costs are not dramatic. So there can always be issues with that. But the real answer to the question is, what makes the most sense? Oftentimes, particularly with unionized workforces, that a step system is what they want. So they negotiate, so be it. The biggest factor that I find that what you do for one, it makes sense as best as possible doing it for others. Now, there are exceptions to that. In particular, oftentimes you'll have a different pay system for law enforcement. They're, I want to say, a unique subset, but it makes sense based on, whereas the years of service, they reach the top step quicker and the like. Now, in a step system, there's different approaches there. Oftentimes, you can have a fixed percentage between the steps. That works. You can, if you're having challenges with attracting entry-level employees, to increase the percentage there those first couple steps, so that's rewarding people at the beginning. That may make the most sense, particularly in PD, where that initial pay is what drives the process, honestly. That may make the most sense. Or if you want to try to be more equitable, across the board, you may want to have a fixed dollar amount between each of the steps, so that the new hires are moving percentage-wise up quicker than employees that are there longer. Lots of different ways of doing things. Honestly, the best way of finding out that question is to ask employees in a lot of ways on what is of greatest value to them. Because you can make the dollars work from one system to another. You just have to find what is motivating and helpful for them.
All right, thank you. And then my next question is the model that you're using to perform this study, is it reusable and for a long period of time? And is it easy to update?
So everything we give is in workable formats deliberately. So the mail merge Karen was talking about a few slides ago, that's all in Word. So it's yours. The analysis that kind of correlates the job titles with the score, that's going to be based on your data, and it's all put into Excel. It's, again, not a generic model that we use across the country or anything like that. So it's really only relevant to you. It makes sense for us to wholesale give it to you. Now, some of our clients, and again, full transparency, like the option of us, PayPoint, evaluating positions in the future so that they can say, well, the consultant said versus HR said. And sometimes that can be helpful. But all the tools are by default given to you. So yes, the system is given. They're all intended to work for, in our estimation, a good 6 to 7 year period that makes the most sense. Now, can there be circumstances like a substantial recession or COVID or the like where things can get out of alignment? Yes, certainly. But under normal economic circumstances, it makes sense to have them built to last. And again, given to you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else go for it?
Denise Felton, Churchill County Assessor. How does your organization use benchmarking? Can you explain that process for us?
In terms of the titles that we use for the benchmarking with respect to the comparators themselves?
Comparators.
So for the comparators, what we start off with is looking at socioeconomic factors, not only population, but also things like median household income, cost of living, median, property values and the like, to the best of our abilities to create a like-to-like kind of group. Practically speaking, you're going to most likely, based on your size and location, you may want to exclude the Reno and Vegas areas. I mean, that's just by default, and that's what a number of the other counties that we've worked with, that is kind of one of the things that they started with. But in other cases, they included additional, municipalities that made the more sense to them. So Tonopah, for example, much smaller, only about 1,500 employees, or 1,500 individuals in the town there, that they included some of the smaller cities around them. Okay, that made sense for them. Again, when we worked for counties in the further western portion of the state, or eastern portion of the state, you can include Utah, for example. That may make the most sense, and that would be the case, with Elko, where that is a competitor for labor. But the big picture goal is not only trying to find the best matches that we can, but you want to have a sample size that is reasonably large, where one or two organizations don't sway things, first off. But part of the analysis, what we're trying to do is eliminating the ones that are substantially different on the high side or low side. Now, again, one of the things that I mentioned is that I don't like using averages. Averages are a nice way of lying, and that's just kind of the bottom line. Whereas you could, theoretically, if you wanted to include being in reasonable proximity, and you wanted to include Reno, for example, and I'm just throwing out a for example. Okay, they may be, for some positions, closer to the 90th percentile at the very top. Well, that doesn't change. That could change an average, but that doesn't necessarily change where you're at. If you strategically want to be in the middle, that one extra comparator doesn't move the needle as long as you have a decent sample size. So to summarize, kind of answering your question, you just want to really eliminate the ones that are several standard deviations, practically speaking, away from you, to make sure that no real distortions are appearing in the data.
So just in summary, Rick, we come to the table with a list of organizations we feel, based on the socioeconomic factors like population size, potentially service offering, commutable distance, those types of items. But we discussed with the project team if there are additional organizations that should be maybe included, because you are either getting people from those locations or losing people to them. So we want to make sure that whatever comparators we use, it is representative, and we have buy-in basically from everyone that this is a good representative sample. Thanks, Rick.
Any other questions or comments?
I have two questions for you. This is Joe Sanford. On your compensable factor score, the tool that you are going to give us, when I looked at the prior studies that you had done, one of my greatest concerns as someone who would be actually looking at using this tool in terms of preparing for a new position that comes in or a reclassification. Can you describe a little bit about how that tool would work on an ongoing matter? Would we, how would we actually utilize it to score, say, a new position, or would we need to call you for assistance?
You always can. You can always also call us to help you walk you through it. You know, that's just reasonable. And I've had that call, for example, from Elko in the past, where in that case, the HR staff moved up to become, county administrator in that case. So it made a lot of sense for retraining, if you will. But practically speaking, it's the same kind of questionnaire that employees fill out. It's just, in this case, what we give to HR is a spreadsheet version that has a way for you to change the responses, and automatically the score is updated, and the brackets that you had seen on that previous slide, and I can flip to it, will update and show you, all right, it's within this pay range. So it's very, very simple. It's answering the exact same questions as before, and it's producing the score. Now, one of the things that we caution when doing this is that this is a type of tool that is honestly, in whether it's you choose PayPoint or another organization, that you keep it in-house, honestly. Any system, with enough time, you can game it. And that's the last thing that you want to have happen. But if it's kept internal, the actual scoring, then the system can remain robust. So that when a job title takes on additional responsibilities or a new position is created that the county needs, you have a way, based on same kind of questionnaire that you're familiar with, to determine, right, how do they stack up, not only factoring in the market data, because again, things are correlated with that, but also how did our employees answer and value the different job titles that's already in existence. So again, all the numbers is not a generic thing that supervision is 15%. Well, it may be different for you. It may be 20, or it may be 5. We allow the data to speak for itself, and that, I think, is one of the stronger parts of, at least on the number side of things, of what PayPoint offers.
Thank you. I have one follow-up question. It's actually not a follow-up on that particular issue, but across our organization, we have approximately 170 classifications. Are you going to be benchmarking all of them, or a percentage of them, or how would you be doing that across our organization?
An excellent question. So the biggest factor in any compensation study is, from the market perspective, is the responses that you get back. When a survey becomes, and this is just honesty, too onerous, you don't get responses, even with Freedom of Information Act kind of requests. I mean, it doesn't happen. Certainly not in a timely fashion. And that's reality. What we're trying to do, though, because we're correlating all the data, is to make sure we have a representation from not only top to bottom with respect to pay, but also to make sure we have a representative titles across the organization in the various departments. So is it important to always have, for example, a county clerk 1, a county clerk 2, a county clerk 3 in your sample? No. They are often hierarchical based on either years of experience or the like. So you could get away with 1, for example, in that case. that may make the most sense. One of the things that we almost always strongly encourage is that most senior level employees, they are automatically benchmarked. Because when you go to the folks, some of the folks on this call, the dollars are bigger. So if they are substantially out of alignment, the more data that you have that says that they're out, it makes making pay changes a lot easier. And again, that's just the reality of things. But as long as we have a good representative sample, it works in every case. Now, I'm a data person based on my previous background, so the more the better as far as I'm concerned. But we want to make sure that the most common titles are included. So a lot of the fundamental county duties, whether it's in the district attorney's, sheriff's office, comptroller's office, that is county clerk, that is common throughout the state, well, that you have a very high degree of confidence that other organizations are going to have those titles. They make sense to include. That's not any statistics talking, that's just common sense. But you're going to have, and many organizations do, have some unique titles with respect to you. Does it make sense to include them in a survey? And the answer typically is no. For example, many years ago, we had a client in the Detroit area, and they were adamant about including this title. We had 0 responses because the title was nature interpreter. And I'm old enough where nature interpreter to me meant somebody from the 70s and a flower child and things like that. Now, what did it really mean? It was a park ranger that interpreted nature for people going there. Okay, that made sense. But sometimes people just look at the title and going, you're crazy. Why did you include this? And so let's have, reasonableness here. We want to make sure, again, the biggest objective is, can you compare titles of similar knowledge, skills, and abilities across the organization that fit in a group, if you will? Yes, you want to make sure they're represented. But is it important to always have the exact 1, 2s, and 3s from every single job title? No, it is not. You have the other pieces of information, not only org structure, but also the knowledge, skills, and abilities that's presented to help identify what is proper placement for those positions.
Thank you.
Tasha Hesse, recorder for the record. I had a question. Will you be using job descriptions as part of your benchmark?
So we absolutely look at job descriptions. That is fundamental. But having said that, job descriptions sometimes don't keep up with the responsibilities that employees do on a day-in, day-out basis. For better or worse, it's getting colder. And what the responsibilities of some titles were in the summer, that may not show up. So that's to make sure we're giving employees credit for what they do. So our approach is for not only to use the job descriptions, but also use the information coming from employees filling out a job questionnaire to help further clarify, if you will, their responsibilities. Now, one of the things that we do when we engage with employees is to tell them that, all right, first off, we're letting you and we want you to be a part of this process, to encourage their participation. So this isn't done, behind anybody's back or in secret or anything like that. Full transparency, we want them to be a part of the process. But we're also going to tell them this isn't a blank check. There's going to be a review process or checks and balance. So we would give department heads the opportunity to review a copy of what employees say, to not only make sure that what is provided is accurate, and accurate means not both overstating and also understating of what employees do, but also complete. Make sure we have a complete picture of the responsibilities. Again, jobs change, and we want to make sure employees are being credited for what they do. So we look at both.
So Rick, just to clarify, on the actual survey itself, how are job descriptions used in the actual survey? in order to make sure that the respondents or participants in the survey are accurately aligning positions to the ones there at Churchill.
Thank you for feeding me a softball. I like softball questions every once in a while. Though I'm more of a baseball person, that's okay. When we send out the external survey, again, we try to make things as simple as possible for people to help them, manage their time and to choose to participate. So not only will we include in what is effectively a relatively straightforward spreadsheet, not only the job titles, but also a summary of the job responsibilities. Now, is that summary all inclusive of what everybody does? No, because in those cases, it becomes just a very long and exhaustive survey. What we're trying to do is make sure we're capturing the most relevant features, if you will, of the questionnaire to make sure, again, to the best of everyone's ability, we have an apples to apples. This is only one measure. We're using 3 to make sure what comes out of the study is accurate and appropriate for you.
So Rick, do we ask the comparator organizations to let us know if they feel like it's a good match? 100%, 75%, 50%?
Yes. So one of the questions that we have is not only providing pay ranges, but how close to the match it is. In cases where the match is not good or they don't feel it is appropriate, tell us. And then in those cases, we would, if it's a poor match, then that's not reasonable. Even if the title looks the same or is the same, that's not appropriate. There's also statistics that are going on behind the scenes that we look at the responses to see if there's anomalies in the data. So for example, that somebody has chosen to pay a certain position because they were in need of it, substantially above what everybody else is doing. So we do have things like that to make sure what is provided is accurate and appropriate.
So I would go as far as to say that I think one of our advantages is the fact that we don't have in essence, black box that we put the data into and, press a button and have an outcome or output. That is something that we deliver to you. But what we're doing is extremely granular in the data. We're looking at each and every response from each and every participant. It is a lot of data points going on, but we don't plug in to a spreadsheet and have a software more or less kick out a final response. We're looking at each and every participant's information that they give us by job title to make sure that there wasn't a typo or something was out of alignment with what expectations would be, and if so, why. So I think that is an advantage to using PayPoint HR. Thanks, Rick.
Lane Mills, the Chief Deputy District Attorney, Churchill County. Quick question for you. As I was looking through your analysis for both Elko and Nye County, one of the things I wondered is what they asked. Are we still online with them there?
Yes, I'm still
okay. Okay, good. I wasn't sure. We had a reload site thing come up for us.
Gotcha.
Is kind of what you were asked to do, and I'll just say this because, as you probably know, Nevada is a very small place, and all of the people who run these organizations talk to each other all the time, and so we're all kind of aware of what kind of vacancy rate everybody else has, and so when we're doing comparisons with other counties, and we're told that these are the comparables, but we happen to know that the other county has half their positions vacant, which tells us it's not a very good comparable because they can't fill the position. And so I'm wondering, as part of your analysis, will you dive kind of below just the analysis of like, this is their pay, this is their position, and then actually see how many vacant positions they have, or do they have like the turnover there that's just a constant grind because of they don't have the appropriate pay level? And is that the kind of analysis that you do? I didn't see it in the other two, but that might be because you weren't asked to do that analysis.
Right. So fair question, and the answer is no, we were not. What makes the most sense, though, is kind of in our process. Yes, we dig into as many numbers as we can to see what makes sense. But part of what we have to bear in mind is, participation. So while you have a certain rapport with some organizations, the more you ask, the lower the responses, and that's sometimes a terrible thing to say, and I understand that. So what we do is part of our process to help minimize that kind of problem, if you will, is to have multiple yardsticks in figuring out what fair pay is. Because you have not only the challenge of being competitive externally in the marketplace and competing against those other organizations, but you also have the competition in some ways internally. What makes the most sense for you? And I'm just this is a generic kind of statement, and it's not necessarily applying here. So in some communities that we work with, counties in particular, sometimes what we find is that either certain job titles in a treasurer's office or a revenue kind of office may be at a grade higher than at the clerk's office, for example. That may be what the market says. That may be in part being driven by, to your point, external factors of they had to hire in people higher. So be it. That can happen. But does that make sense for the organization? And the answer can sometimes be no. To go back to Karen's point earlier with that community in Missouri, Parks and Rec for that organization was a highly valued organization. And some of the factors like the ability to attract and retain that high-level employees was borne out in where they fit in that organization's org structure and in the knowledge, skills, and ability that was being required. That's how that kind of piece comes to play. Because for them, when we polled other similar size organizations, same kind of competition for labor, not only locally there in their geographic area, but even across the state, they made the conscious choice of elevating those positions. So be it. You can do that all day long. You just have to be kind of transparent. But in terms of how far down you want to dive into the challenge or problem areas that you have, that's one of the first things we ask with talk with the project team is, what are the areas where you're having a challenge with either attracting or retaining employees? Oftentimes in law enforcement, it is the initial level of pay. That is what drives the bus. It is not often time where you have a challenge of retaining, for example, sergeants, if you will. That may be the challenge, and you have to address that. When we worked for this one county in New Hampshire during COVID, for example, they had a challenge of just hiring RNs and LPNs in their nursing home. Okay, in that case, pay point, pivot, and figure out what makes the most sense for this challenge area that we have. And that's probably what I would ask the project team day one is, where are the areas that either where you're having challenges, or is a systemic issue that needs to be addressed, and address it at the beginning and craft that external survey in a fashion so we can ask the really relevant questions and less so the ones that with respect to the percentage of non-PERS versus PERS employees that you have that may not be exactly earth-shattering and really driving the process to really tailor things so that it meets your needs. Just again, full disclosure, and I'm talking too much to answer the question. I apologize. I just want to be as complete as possible. One of our clients, for example, in Florida, they weren't interested in most of the benefit kind of questions that we normally ask. It's like they were happy with what they had and weren't going to change. So be it. But what was relevant to them is they were about to spend several $1 million on a new HRIS system. All right? Ask questions with respect to that or other questions in that external survey so that for the areas that were a challenge to them, we can find the answers. So again, our approach is don't treat any clients as a cookie cutter because that's of no value to anyone. Treat each client based on where their needs are to answer the questions that are important to them.
So Rick, let me just clarify and ask you a question. You're kind of suggesting then that in the tab on the survey that goes out to the comparator organizations, that kind of on the general question or benefit question tab that we ask the participants what job titles they are having difficulty in placing people, and also potentially including a question on the salary tab, how many positions are budgeted versus how many active, and then kind of, I guess that would be a discussion on how best to handle that.
Sure. Our survey is not intended to be generic. While we have a standard list of questions that we often ask, it's designed to be, all right, let's ask the questions that are of importance. So, for example, some communities that we work with, we've kind of tailored the questionnaire to say, in this case, can you please provide us the data with respect to, and provide the data in non-PERS terms? Does that make the most sense? Compare non-PERS to non-PERS, and get rid of kind of that category, if you will, because it had, unnecessary confusion. Is it relevant? Sure. Do you know the answer? Yes. So we can do those kinds of things. We can ask the questions with, right, the number of budgeted positions versus the number that you actually have filled to see kind of on a coarser level of how effective they are of their particular salary range to address your point.
So when Rick, you're saying PERS, you're just referring to the state employee retirement system.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other
Any other
questions?
questions?
Yeah, any other questions from anyone up here? Okay, thank you both. We appreciate it.
Okay, and then just to clarify, we do include one on-site visit, whether that be in the beginning or the end of the project, and that's up to you.
Okay, thank you for that information.
Okay. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and look forward to the opportunity to possibly work with you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was writing my notes down. Discussion now.
Sure.
What is everyone's thoughts? I kind of have a lead, but
Go ahead, but Joe, moving forward, it seems to me that from what I've seen, Baker Tilly might be easier to work with.
I would agree with that.
I want to say I'm an Excel guru, and the whole idea of putting things into Excel, that's a skill level, and mail merge. Sorry, I just wanted to make that point.
I mean, yeah.
Baker Tilly was my pick kind of off the bat too. My only concern, I guess not really concerned, but those benchmark positions and, they're going to, I shouldn't say exclude that other 40%, and maybe those are duplicate positions and stuff like that, but are we missing out on some of that information in that data?
I think if we have a discussion with them, they will include that.
Okay.
Once we sort of give them what we want to see,
Mhm.
it's going to tell them what they need to do to give us the product that we're asking for.
Okay.
My suspicion is that we will identify those 100 benchmark positions first and confirm whether or not that actually meets all of our needs, right? I mean, if that excludes the 1, 2, 3, and we have at least one of those 3, maybe that's sufficient. If we have substantial numbers of positions that have no comparison or benchmark being done, we will have to have the conversation with them that says, look, we're going to need more than 100. And if that changes the price or something like that, we can always come back and talk. But there is a significant number of positions that are multiples of a single class. I haven't counted them that way. 100 seems about right, but it could be slightly more than that.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions, comments, concerns?
Have we reviewed the positions that we have to identify that some of them could be combined or done away with before we, just say that we have more?
So that is one of the very first things I think we will be doing, is having a communication amongst all of the department heads with the current existing job descriptions and pay table that we have. We'll be identifying what positions currently exist or potentially are unfilled, and whether those are positions that continue to need to exist, or if they can be done away with. We have a number of classes that we have already sort of combined across the various departments, but we can search for and identify any additional positions that could be combined.
Any other questions? Any public comment? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
You guys have anything else you want to say? Any more questions?
I'll try to get it out.
I'll just echo that I agree with your comments on the Tilly organization.
Okay, with that, a motion, please.
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve the approval of a compensation study to be performed by Baker Tilly.
Mr. Chairman, I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carries. We'll now go to our last time for public comment.
Well, do we need to, have we approved, by just doing that, have we approved everything we need to move it forward and get it working, and there's not going to be any more, like?
We won't need anything in addition.
Okay.
Now, in that contract, are we able to bring them out with that motion if we want them on site?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I just want to make sure that there won't be any hiccups or anybody saying, well, we got to do this, and then it delays things.
If you'd like, I mean, I guess you'd want to say how many times you want me to bring them out. I was thinking 1 or 2 is included with this motion as needed. If we don't need it, we won't, but
Right, I was thinking once or twice. I was thinking this along the same lines, once or twice.
Okay. Public comment, noting no public comment, we stand adjourned. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.